Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Chuck R-Montello is a Republican candidate in the 41st Assembly District. The primary is August 11. Chuck, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for having me.
What do you consider the top issue in your campaign, Chuck?
Well, I've got a few issues. As you know, I've been in education almost 25 years, so that's going to be kind of in the forefront. I'm hoping to get on a few committees that can utilize that expertise. But real strong in there is our need for mental health. Okay.
Now, when you say you've been part of our K-12, now have you been a teacher, an administrator, or what?
Well, I've taught for a number of years. I spent 9 years in the principal's office. I'm back in the classroom working with alternative ed kids, and I currently serve on the Montello School Board.
Oh, you do? Okay, good, yes. Fine. Okay,
all the angles. Then the coach and
understand. Let's work through a few specific questions. If the governor's right and we collect $2 billion less in taxes because of the pandemic this year, tough choices: cut spending, raise taxes, or fees. Where are you on that?
Well, unfortunately, our small rural districts, the 41st, have seen this before. Not too long ago, the state was paying 2/3 in Montello anyway of the school funds. Now we're down to 16%, and we've had to tighten our belt and tighten our belt and tighten our belt. Looking through the lens, the Republicans have done a good job of holding taxes down. I would hope we could continue that. And it's going to be tough, especially in our districts. Maybe there'll be a little bit of give and take and some maybe reappropriating some fees, but I'm thinking we're going to have to tighten our belts even more.
Okay.
We can't afford those taxes.
Thank you. Americans know a lot more about how some police officers treat those in custody than we did 2 months ago. The governor's recommended a 9-bill package that would ban no-knock warrants and chokeholds and uniform training standards for those that want to be police officers. Do you think we need some of these police reforms?
Steve, what most people don't know is I also serve part-time as a deputy sheriff here in Marquette County. And I don't believe what's good in Madison is necessarily good in Montello or Ripon or the Dells. I think we need more local control. I think those bigger police forces, especially like obviously Minneapolis and those that find themselves in the news, need more standards and a heck of a lot more training. And my guess is they have such a turnover there that they can't keep up with the training. And then funds are always a challenge. But I guess I'm not in favor. The police, even in our small towns, are put in enough situations that they risk their lives every day. So in short, I would not be in favor of statewide standards. I would leave it up to local control.
Okay, appreciate it. A related topic: where are you on the issue of whether we should legalize medical and recreational marijuana?
Oh boy, first time I got to do a little backtracking. Initially, it's not really an issue for me. My part-time as a deputy sheriff, I deal with the issues after the fact. I'm mostly to transports, but in the school system, I deal with that. And I guess, I've never, it's never been an issue for me. And when I first started the campaign, I'm in favor of medical marijuana. I guess I would go on record saying that.
Okay.
At first, I think I stated I would not oppose it. I think you can't turn back the tide. All the neighboring states are passing it, and we're one of the few in the Midwest that haven't. Right now, I just don't know if I can commit to that anymore. I'm starting to see research out of Colorado where it hasn't turned out so well for them. So I think I'm open to a conversation. but I guess I wouldn't pledge my support, or I wouldn't even pledge that I would not oppose it at this point. And I need to reel that first statement back in. And as a matter of fact, I need to get on my website and change it. So
I see. Okay. The issue of who should draw the next congressional and legislative boundary lines, the Constitution says that the party in power in the Capitol will draw them, but the governor would like a People's Commission to draw it and then forward it to the legislature. What do you think is the best way to draw the next set of lines?
Well, we have a system in place, first of all. So, the right thing to do if the people demand change is to change it. And I think people are demanding that the redistricting is fair. Unfortunately, like so many issues, we're so polarized as a public right now, whether it's the national events or even here right in Wisconsin. And I see it right here in my hometown. I think I would probably leave it and then make an appeal right now for those in charge, and that would be the party in power at the time, to make it as fair as possible. But they need to be redone. Our district, the 41st, I go across the north from Green Lake County and all the way Marquette and Adams, but then it swings down to the Dells and Lake Delton, along the Wisconsin River there. It's just crazy trying to get out and represent all those people.
I understand. Let's talk about property taxes. School boards, local governments live with revenue caps, limits on what they can levy in property taxes because we're a high property tax state. Referendums, of course, you can exceed the limits. If you're a member of the assembly, would you vote to keep those property tax caps in place or do away with them?
Short answer is I would vote to keep them in place. They have hurt, our small rural districts like Montello, and especially from my view, whether I'm an administrator or even a teacher, and now on the school board, it just makes it hard to do business. The prices go up and the taxes, like I said earlier, from the state, we get less revenue and we got to demand more from our local taxpayers. But I think what is built in there is, our country's checks and balances system. And our voters have always come through for us. When they see the issue, whether it's a building issue, we'll bring them in and show it to them. And they're like, what do you need? You need this to replace this. You need to fix it. Sure, I'll vote yes. So I think it's the checks and balances system, and I would vote to keep it.
Okay. The local governments, though, they rely on the property tax a lot more in Wisconsin than in other states, as you know. Is it time to consider alternative sources of revenue? Let me throw out two: broadening our 5% sales tax to now exempt products or services, or giving towns and villages the ability to levy a half-cent sales tax. Is it time to consider alternative revenue options to ease the reliance on the property tax, Chuck?
Well, when we talk about the gasoline tax or road tax or a 5.5% or even more sales tax, the first thing that comes to mind is, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But what I see in our districts is what do we call it? Property rich, tax poor. And we need to give some of those people some relief. So I think we got to have that conversation. I don't know where that conversation is going, but we got to give those property owners some relief.
The debate over how we find a stable funding for our highways. The governor recommended an increase in our 30.9 cents per gallon gas tax. That hasn't been raised in 10 years. Would you consider raising the gas tax to stabilize highway funding?
I think I would consider that. I don't necessarily know that I'm in favor of that. I understand the tax hasn't been raised in 10 years, but if you look at the gas price in the last 10 years, that's went up substantially. Like the last question, I think it's time to start the conversation. We do need to get our roads in better shape. And from what I understood, some of the funding for our roads has been reappropriated as well. And maybe it's time to take a look at that and bring it back to where it was intended.
Okay. A couple questions on the COVID pandemic. It's hit the economy, and it's hit healthcare providers that the state relies on for services. We've all seen the frontline role that hospitals are playing nationally and, of course, in Wisconsin. If you're a member of the Assembly voting on the next state budget, do hospitals deserve perhaps even a greater priority than they may have gotten in the current state budget?
Fiscally, I don't know that I would give them a greater priority per se. I'm going to have to go back and reflect on my time in the Marine Corps. We were, you're on a budget there as well, although it's a government budget. We couldn't afford to, say, put the same amount of resources on every front. So what we had it was an operational readiness float. Actually, I was in charge of it while I was stationed in Hawaii. But what it was just this vast stockpile of weaponry and things that would be taken to whatever front. So obviously we were in the Pacific, but if that was needed, it could be loaned out to a different unit in a different location. I'll talk about ventilators just for 1 second if we have time. Just kind of a stockpile. I mean, the COVID virus is probably not gone. So have that stockpile of ventilators, back to the Marine Corps again, have that stockpile of ventilators and have it ready to move. If the breakout is in Madison, they get put on a truck and taken to Madison or Milwaukee. I don't see that happening up in the North Woods, but have it ready to go and maybe not have the funding go straight to an individual hospital. I guess.
Okay.
My feelings.
Follow-up question. Do we need a state law that says if a business has complied with the CDC and maybe the WEDC guidelines on health and safety regarding to COVID, that business cannot be sued, cannot be the subject of a frivolous lawsuit?
Mm-hmm. I think the key word there is frivolous. I attended the Assembly hearing on the return of schools in the fall.
Yes.
And the WIA was there, and a few other groups testified, and a couple of them asked for protection liability-wise from, like, let's just say if kids were transported to a football game and on the bus they came down with COVID-19, could they sue the schools and the WIAA and et cetera? I think people make a choice. And this whole COVID thing, what you do in Milwaukee might not be what you do in Marquezan or Montello or one of the towns up here.
Yeah.
So I think people make a choice. Right now I'm not going into real crowded restaurants. I'll order takeout. I wear my mask in Walmart. At home and maybe on the campaign trail and the parades and stuff, I practice social distancing. But I think they do have to be protected to some degree, especially if they're following all the guidelines the government has put out.
Okay. When a local government wants to authorize a major public works project, should there be standards and requirements that give preferences to Wisconsin companies? The reason I ask is a study found in 2015, out-of-state contractors got $71 million in contracts for these public works projects, but that doubled to more than $146 million in 2018. Should local governments have to give preferences to Wisconsin businesses?
Well, it really depends on what you mean by preferences. As a veteran, I have a veteran's preference on a lot of the government jobs and things like that. That doesn't guarantee me the job.
Mm-hmm.
It just, kind of maybe moves me to the front of the line for some screening. So again, it would really depend on the definition of preference. I would love to see, Wisconsin companies work more, especially if the work is here in Wisconsin. But, as a local government, we need to save some money and have the best job done as well. So,
okay.
Kind of dodge that question, but, that's, it's double-edged.
I understand. We've talked about a lot of issues. Is there any issue that you consider important to your campaign that we haven't touched on that you want to mention quickly?
Yeah, the mental health. I really think I'm going to be a champion for mental health. Right now, I see the same thing working with Sheriff's Department that I see in schools every day. There's a huge need for mental health, and nobody's delivering that. whether it's an extra counselor here or there, or working for the sheriff's department the other day. I was on a transport, and obviously this lady was in need of mental health. I spent 14 hours on a transport, wind up taking the lady to Oshkosh, to Winnebago, which is an hour away for us. And it's just crazy that there aren't more facilities available and more people in the industry giving help. So
Okay.
I'm gonna be a champion of mental health.
Final question. Highlight differences between you and your opponents, or why are you the most qualified?
Well, I think we're all very similar on the issues. There are claims that I'm more conservative than him, or he's more conservative than I. I think we're all Republicans, and depending on the issue, whether we're to the right of center or all the way to the right, I think we're very similar in our thoughts. I think what really separates us is my wealth of experience. My dad was a farmer. I'm a veteran. I've been in education. I've been in the tourism industry, in the hospitality industry. I've been in the sheriff's department for a year now. I just bring a wealth of experience to the position. I'm 60 years old,
Okay.
so I bring a lifetime of experiences.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Chuck Harsh of Montello is a Republican candidate in the 41st Assembly District. The primary election is August 11th. Chuck, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.